We're so grateful to have you all with us today. The show is America's leading and longest running art, antiques, and design fair. The show is proudly owned by and benefits Eastside House Settlement, one of New York's longest serving service organizations. All ticket sales and revenue from the show supports the life-changing work that Eastside House does each and every day. We primarily focus on education and workforce development. So thank you, all of you, because your presence this afternoon helps us sustain that mission. So a round of applause to all of you. I'm delighted to present today a panel filled with some of my favorite people. Not that I have favorites, but this is the piece I'd never part with, Treasures for New Tastemakers. We're doing this in collaboration with Country Life, and we'll have them come up and talk momentarily. But the prospect of the panel is really to explore what art and objects are defining the rising collectors of today. So I'm really thrilled to introduce you all to the moderator, Patrick Monahan, and a dear friend who is a writer and art advisor, contributes regularly with Country Life and Vanity Fair and multiple other publications, and hold this space because he has a book coming out soon. Then we have to his right, Mica Bowman, who's the director of Bowman Sculpture. Mica joined Bowman Sculpture in 2019. She's been instrumental in the gallery's recent evolution, where she plays a key role in shaping the company's strategic and creative direction, and notably has also brought in a lot of young contemporary artists into the gallery's roster. Her work focuses on the commissioning, production, and delivery of sculptural projects, working closely with the artists, architects, institutions, and private clients to realize the ambitious works that they're presenting. To her right is Justin Fichelson. Justin is a passionate collector of old masters in decorative arts. He serves as a member of the Paintings Council at the J. Paul Getty Museum and as a Wrightsman Fellow at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In 2024, he was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom to the California Council for the Humanities Board of Directors. And of course, with all those accolades, most importantly, he's co-chair of Young Collectors Night here at the Winter Show. And then to his right, we have our longtime friend, Laurence Milstein. Laurence is the co-founder of PRISM, an award-winning next-gen communications agency engaging Gen Z and Gen Alpha across art, culture, and media through a community of more than 1,000 members in over 20 countries. He was recently appointed the chair of the Frick Collection's Young Fellows Steering Committee, and he serves on the boards of the Parrish Art Museum. He was named Forbes 30 Under 30 list for marketing and advertising, and led PRISM to be recognized as Gen Z Agency of the Year by PR.net. He's also an avid collector. So without further ado, I'd like to actually welcome up Carla from Country Life, who's going to make a few remarks.
What I love about it is that in this time, and trust me, Country Life is a weekly magazine, so it's a lot of issues we're talking about, no two stories have ever been the same or even vaguely similar. You know, we collect for many reasons. We collect for scholarly reasons, we collect for aesthetic reasons, but very often underpinning this all is a deep emotional, individual connection that we have to perhaps a period of the past or a particular artist or a particular past collector even, and it shines through the objects that we love the most. It's really what makes an object that is beautiful also very meaningful. And Patrick is a particular case in point for me because it doesn't just have one tie, it's like got a whole raft of them. When I interviewed him for Country Life, it was like those nesting dolls, you know, take off one and there's some more connections underneath, and peel those off and there's even more. But I don't want to spoil his story, so I will let him talk, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing what he has to say and what the panelists have to say. So thank you so much, and I'm all ears, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Carla. That's so sweet. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with three, not just panelists, but dear, dear, beloved friends. And at the Winter Show with this panel for the second year running, the piece I'd never part with, and especially to have my darling Carla Passino Bargione here, and also Rosie Patterson here, who's the digital and travel editor at Country Life. What a joy to see friends from New York and from London, from San Francisco, from all over, brought together by art. The section, the piece I wouldn't part with at Country Life, means a lot to me. Carla covered a story that I have told quite a bit over the years, most recently last year at the Winter Show. You can see this article that Carla wrote about a drawing that's in my collection by Frederick Lord Leighton of 1895, which happens to be the first direct study for probably the most reproduced Victorian painting, Flaming June. And I won't retell this story. Read Carla's article, read the article I wrote about it in Vanity Fair 15 years ago, however long it was, in your spare time. And also, one other thing, I want to welcome a whole group from the island of Puerto Rico, because Flaming June started in London and through this extraordinary chain of chances arrived at the Museo d'Arte de Ponce in Puerto Rico, and now is the jewel of the collection. So we have a wonderful group from Puerto Rico here today, which always brings me joy. Now, moving on. I wasn't going to say anything else today, but unfortunately, this is not funny, this is rather sad, Laurence Hendrick couldn't come to New York from London this week to join our panel as was originally billed, so I decided to add another piece that I wouldn't part with, a short one. So, lots of people know about my connection to Puerto Rico and to Flaming June. What many people don't know is that I'm half Greek, and Greece is a very big part of my life. And I own this icon, this 18th century Greek icon, which you see on the screen here, which is a depiction of Saint Demetrius of Thessaloniki, who is the patron saint of our region in northern Greece. And you see him here, he's a princely saint mounted on his battle horse, trampling the Bulgarian king who's coming to attack his people. If there are any Bulgarians here this afternoon, I apologize to you in advance. So this icon means a lot to me in a lot of different geographical ways. We come from, my family, a tiny, tiny village in the north of Greece, way, way, way up in the mountains, where on a clear day you can see all the way to Albania. And our house, our family home, is at the top of the hill, and the only thing that's higher than our home is the wonderful tiny village church. And there's a story in our family that during the time of my great-great-grandpa, it was the saint's day of a Greek saint called Saint Charalambos, and Greek people are very superstitious. And my great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother did not light a candle in front of the icon of Saint Charalambos on his saint's day, nor did they light a candle in front of the icon of Saint Demetrius. As a result, obviously, a great wind swept into the church and opened all the windows and knocked the icons onto the floor and broke them into many pieces. So obviously, my great-great-grandmother made my great-great-grandfather commission a new suite of icons for the church and name their grandson Demetrius, who was my grandfather. So there's a lot of family connection here in this one image. And when it came up at auction a few years ago, this particular one, I bought it not only because of the name of the saint, but also, if you see at the top, there's a big chunk that's broken where probably a cherub's head used to sit above the wings. And I thought the broken Saint Demetrius is a sign, and I have to have it. So I do have it, and it sits next to the front door of my apartment, and sometimes there's a little light that shines right across his face. I'm superstitious too. And to me, it reminds me, I live in New York, as many of us do, in a city that's constantly stressful and constantly troubling, disappointing, exciting, challenging, whatever you like. And that saint makes me think, persevere, charge ahead, get over your troubles and keep going. And most of all, it connects me in this big city to the tiny village at the top of a mountain in the north of Greece, where if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here with all of you today. So that's my other piece I wouldn't part with, aside from Flaming June. And now I'm delighted to turn it over to my darling Mica Bowman.
Thanks, Patrick.
And I'm going to change the slide.
Flattered to be considered a collector. I'm also an art dealer, and I'm here exhibiting at the Winter Show. Small plug. But they say that all art dealers are actually frustrated collectors because we love what we buy and we very rarely get to hang on to them. But my piece is actually a piece that I purchased very early on when I joined the gallery. This is Perseus Arming by an English artist, Sir Alfred Gilbert. He's quite a famous English sculptor. If anyone's been, I'm sure everyone's been to London at some point or another, but there's, the little sculpture of Eros in Piccadilly Circus by the same artist. So a very important sculptor for us Brits. And this piece was important for me. It's only about, oh, sorry, can't do that. It's only about this big, so it's a little piece. But this is an image of Perseus arming himself for battle. So everyone knows the stories of Perseus from Greek mythology. I think what's interesting about this piece and the artist's intention behind it is that this is him preparing to go into battle. So this isn't a normal image of what you'd see of Perseus, usually holding the head of Medusa or something a little bit more grand and dramatic like that. This is him checking that he's got all of his weapons, he's arming himself, he's preparing himself to go into battle. And I think what's wonderful about this artist is that, and actually this new school sculpture period, is that it's a little bit more psychologically and emotionally charged. The artist is getting into what Perseus might have been thinking at the time. This isn't just a hero, but this is someone that's going to go and do something scary. And he's got to prepare himself to go and do that. He's arming himself with the tools that he needs. And it's a little bit autobiographical for the artist too, because at this stage of his career, he's preparing himself with the tools of his trade as a sculptor. And he was a very well-known sculptor and fulfilled many commissions for Queen Victoria. So early in his career, he's preparing himself to become one of England's greatest sculptors. And it relates to me personally because I joined the gallery, which is a family business, fairly young. I was only 24 years old. And I was nervous. Had very big shoes to fill. And it was a piece that I researched early on in the gallery. It's a piece that we acquired in the gallery. And I decided to keep it for myself because it gave me, I suppose, a sort of courage that I was a young art dealer at the time. And I was arming myself with the tools of my trade. I was learning to do scary things like this and talk to people in public speaking, to learn about these objects, to go out in the world and make a name for myself. And I suppose this little sculpture just gave me that strength and reminded me that others have done scary things before me and that later I will be holding my own head of Medusa. But for now, I needed to prepare. So it marks that phase of my life where I was learning. And it is a piece I will never part with. It still sits on my desk at home. And occasionally I look across at it and think, we made it. We did it. We haven't failed yet.
How big is it?
It's only this big. It's a very little piece. I mean, he made them in different sizes. We actually have another piece on the stand at the moment, if you want to go and look, which is a much, much bigger one. It's the large scale. And it's of comedy and tragedy, which him holding up the big comedy and tragedy mask with a hole in the middle of the mouth. And this piece the artist made towards the end of his career. And what a lot of people don't know about him was that while he was very successful and everybody loved his work, he was really bad with money and kind of finishing things off. So Queen Victoria had given him all of these wonderful commissions, but he was spending the money faster than he could finish the commissions. So this piece, Comedy and Tragedy, is a fabulous sculpture, another one that I absolutely love. It has this big grinning mouth, and through the mouth you can see him turned away like this. And through the mouth from the front, it looks as if he's ha 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 laughing. But if you turn the sculpture around, you see that there's a little bee on his leg that's just stung him. And he's actually grimacing in pain as he turns away. And it's, again, a metaphor for his own life, that while it was all shiny and successful on the outside, there was actually something a little bit worse on the inside that he was struggling with, which I think is something we can also all very much relate to. I advise you all to go and look at the art of Sir Alfred Gilbert and the New School sculpture movement in general. It's an interesting time where people are looking at mythologies, but also a little bit more about the human spirit and our nature and our psychological and emotional impact.
I'm sensing a theme between yours
I know,
and
it
mine.
was really good.
darling.
You mentioned Greek, and I was like, here we go, on to
Not just that,
mythology.
but taking courage. We're both Libras, by the way.
We are. There were a few claps there, other Libras in the room. Yeah.
Justin?
So my piece would be this pair of George II giltwood chairs, side chairs, from 1730. And they came up at auction a few years ago, and I didn't notice them at first. I actually, in the auction, I was going after 2 silver salvers that were from the Dukes of Hamilton, and I was the underbidder on those a few years before that, and I'd missed out on them, and I saw them come back. So I had signed up for phone bidding with Sotheby's to go after those, and then I came across these right before, and I looked at the provenance, and I said, I have to bid on those too. And I fortunately, miraculously got them for a great price, and I adore them. They were sold at the first Anne and Gordon Getty auction, and I missed them because there was so much stuff in there, and a lot of it went, a little bit out of my price point, but I bought a lot from that auction. And about a couple years after that, I had gone with a group from the US, an eclectic group that a friend organized, to King Charles II's coronation. And we didn't actually go to the coronation, but we went to different tours of sites. And Henrietta Spencer Churchill, whose brother is the Duke of Marlborough, who's like a mutual friend, and she's an interior designer, had organized a lunch at Blenheim Palace. And after that, insisted that we all go to Ditchley Park, which is this magnificent Georgian estate. It's almost adjacent to Blenheim Palace. It's like a 10-minute drive, and it's spectacular. It was built by George Henry Lee, the second Earl of Lichfield, and his great-great-grandfather, the first Earl, was a big courtier of Elizabeth I, and there's the Ditchley portrait where she's standing on a map. It's probably the best portrait ever done of Elizabeth. But anyway, the second Earl was King Charles II's illegitimate grandson via Barbara Villiers, his most famous mistress, and he built this spectacular Georgian estate. And it's, most of these estates in England have been kind of over time touched and altered, or maybe they couldn't afford the heating bill, or so they destroyed wings. And this has all the wings intact. It's spectacular. It was in the same family until the 1930s, when Ronald Tree, who was an MP, and his wife Nancy Lancaster, who's a very famous interior designer, purchased it, and they bought all of the furnishing. I mean, in her biography, she said she got everything, lock, stock, and barrel in the house, and it remained in the house. They ended up getting divorced. She moved out, he stayed, and then there's a Sarah Briakoff, that's a very complicated name. He would do watercolors of interiors, and there's an interior with one of the, well, you can see it right here, with one of the chairs in the grand entry hall. They were designed, the chairs, as all of the furniture and interiors, were designed under the direction of William Kent, and the chairs specifically were made by Thomas Roberts. And so you have the painting of them in the house. There's also photos of them in the house when they lived there upstairs. They remained until he died, and then they passed to his son, who was living at Mereworth Castle. And then when he died, they were then sold from there to Partridge in London, and then to a Noble collection. And then they came up in the 80s, and Anne and Gordon Getty purchased them, and it turned out they were bidding against a close friend, Peter J. Sharp, who owned the Carlisle Hotel. And he had this fabulous apartment uptown, I think on Park Avenue. I forget the interior designer, but someone really famous did it. And he really wanted these chairs. And so they loaned them to him. And they were in his apartment for a number of years, which is quite cool, until they were given back. And so needless to say, when I saw them at auction, it was the combo of having Ditchley Park, which I had just been to, and then also coming from Anne and Gordon Getty. And I live in San Francisco, and they really shaped my interest in collecting. And it was really probably one of the most incredible collections I've ever seen. I had to get them. I did get them. And the first thing I did, I wanted to know where in their house had these chairs been, and there were a lot of Matterports and videos and photos done for Christie's before the sale. And I looked, and I figured they might have been in a library or something, and there they were. They were the first things gracing their grand entry hall. Like right when you open the door, they were gracing either side of the grand entry to this, really what I would consider one of the best collections of the 20th century, 21st century, 20th century. Yeah, very excited to have them. And I think having that kind of multiple layers of provenance, I think, is what really excites me about them. First of all, I love them. I think they're very sculptural. Anne Getty had put 18th century crimson velvet and reapplied it on a new ivory background, which is incredible. But having that, and then they were in Peter J. Sharp's place, and then they were, Ditchley Park. And Churchill and his family spent a lot of the war years in this home. His ancestral home was where he was born was Blenheim Palace, but that was considered a little bit of a target. So he spent a lot of time in this house. So the chances are great that he probably did sit in the chairs as well. So, for me, collecting is a bit of a fantasy too. So it's kind of the fantasy of an 18th century home, or, whether he sat in them or not, he definitely sat in them to me. Anyway, I think they're beautiful, and I'm a maximalist, but I think that they could go in a contemporary setting as well. They're very sculptural. They have these kind of lion's heads you can see, and I'm in love with them.
Thank you. Laurence?
So the work I would never part with is a piece by Simeon Solomon. It's called A Vision of Love Revealed in Sleep. And you see it's this androgynous figure, almost suspended in reverie. He's kind of looking out, truly love-struck. And the lines as you look are faded, they're blurred. You feel like you're kind of going in and out of some sort of dream state. And it's this sense of optimism and love. But when you spend more time with the work and you also understand a bit about Solomon's own life, he was an incredibly tormented figure. He drew this work in the last year of his life, 1905. He was plagued with scandal. He's kind of widely recognized as perhaps the first gay outed artist of kind of art history in some ways, as kind of that figurations of what sexual identity were coming and taking shape. And he really died in this state of scandal. He faced kind of isolation and ostracization from the artistic community that he was a part of. He was plagued with addiction, and understood in this light, this work, I think, takes on a totally different meaning. This idea that love is not fulfilled in this moment. This idea that love is not this sense of destination, but it's expressed through a sense of longing. And I think this idea that the love he was imagining truly was a dream. And so I keep this work in my bedroom as kind of this reminder of what it means to, no matter what circumstances that you're in, you can produce something so remarkable and moving and beautiful. And it's that tension, which is precisely why I could never let this work go.
So, you all have your pieces that you wouldn't part with. What kinds of works are on your radar today which you might be looking for? Maybe works that weren't on your radar 5 years ago or 7 years ago. What are you looking for? Where do you look for them, and what do you want to find in the world, either at the fair or in the wider art world, please?
I think Jane Reitzman, who is a famous New York City resident who donated a lot to the Met, she said a quote that really resonates, which is, "I collect nothing but everything," and that's kind of how I feel. It's not, I don't collect a specific genre. I just look for things that are beautiful to me, regardless of when they were made, where they come from. I mean, I gravitate towards 18th century English, but for me, I mean, it could have been, there was a convex mirror on your stand that I was eyeing.
I paid him for this.
No. I was working on The Boss at home, and she finally kind of agreed to it, and it sold.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah. But I think I don't own any antique arms and armor, which sounds insane, but Peter Feiner's gallery is amazing, the best in the world, and I would love to have some beautiful, 400-year-old dueling pistols and stuff like that.
What's on your radar today, Mica?
I think, funnily enough, my comment was going to be similar, that I don't think I go out into the world looking things for my clients, specific things. But for me, I think it's really about that serendipitous moment when you see something, you love it, someone teaches you about it, and you have that sensation, which I'm sure all of us can relate to, where you have that moment, you look at something, you're like, oh my God, I really can't live without this. How am I going to make this work? But I think in terms of where you look for things, I've bought artworks all over the world. I think they're the ones that are obvious, like galleries and auction houses and things. But there's something very special about stumbling upon something hidden that's in sort of like a flea market in Paris. I mean, I'm a little bit of a romantic, but I love that. And there's a quest to it where you find something you think, oh, I think this could be by so and so, or it reminds me of something else. And then you get to go and you research it, and it's devastating if it's not what you thought it was, but you love it anyway for the memories. But if it is what you thought it was, it's this whole discovery. It's one of the most exciting things. But also, I do encourage everyone to do art fairs. I know it sounds like a very obvious plug, but you're surrounded by experts in their field. And I think the only way to really buy something that you love is to understand it. And if someone can tell you a story about that object, I think here in the Armory, we're lucky to have so many excellent storytellers, and every object has a story. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Not if you're going to buy it. And I know there's that kind of pressure that if you're going to talk to someone, you need to buy something from them. That's really not, is what we're here for, but we're also here just to talk to people and share our passion. So ask the questions, learn the stories, because it's the only way you know if you're in love with something.
That's one thing you said that's really interesting. Do you think you look for things for yourself differently from the way you look for clients?
Definitely. I don't have the luxury of just being a collector. I wish I was to a certain extent, but it is what I do for a living. So I have a roster of things in my head that I know so-and-so wants or so-and-so wants. So I think I'm
What about when it's for
looking.
yourself?
When it's for myself, again, I think
Are
it's
you
more...
gentle to yourself, or are you just as hard on yourself as you are when you choose for clients? Rigorous is what I meant to say.
I think I'm probably more rigorous when it comes to something that I'm buying for myself, because I have to go through the process of justifying it to myself. And I'm a sculpture dealer and I love sculpture, so often I will go and buy sculpture, or I'll find a contemporary artist. So I'll find something, I fall in love with it, and then I'm like, oh, I should probably put it in the gallery. I should probably sell it for someone else. So I think for me to actually take something home for myself, I have to really, really, really love it.
That's absolutely right. I'm also thinking about everything that we're interested in is very much an evolving field, especially Laurence, I know that what you really love is gay art.
Yeah.
And that's something that's changing every minute. And I wondered, are there areas of your field which are still underrated, and places, either kinds of works people should be looking for, or take it?
Definitely. I think through my involvement at the Frick, I've been drawn to contemporary artists who are engaging with kind of old masterworks. And I think of Flora Yuknovich's Four Seasons, which is, in response to Boucher's own version of the Four Seasons, or like Vladimir Kanevsky's Porcelain, and this idea that these are, in some ways showing reverence to the works that preceded them, but still feel incredibly contemporary and fresh and modern. And so I kind of think about that in collecting as well, how you can take works that, are historical and tie them to a contemporary, let's say, gay artist. I think that that's a huge focus of mine, like a Doron Langberg or a Florian Kruer, and how there's a cross-generational conversation that's happening when you are kind of bringing the works together in kind of composition.
Also, I was thinking of something Justin just said about the chairs. How you had this wonderful comment, Justin, about the chairs, even though they're very ornate, that they could exist happily in a contemporary interior. How do you think you can make historic work live a new life?
Well, I think if we're a minimalist interior, they're so sculptural, you could have them on their own in a room, or with even a modern piece nearby.
Yes.
Obviously, if you're going to, if it's more maximalism, it'd be hard to do that. But I think they kind of they're so sculptural on the legs that they're really sculptures within themselves. And I like the mix. I think that mixing different stuff and not shying away from it. One thing that annoys me in some museums today is to get people interested in old masters, they take away the ornate frames, or they try to put a modern or contemporary piece next to it. I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think it's just exposure, and they should have more galleries that feel truly 18th century, where they would have covered the walls with stuff. And I think museums are a little afraid in this country to do that. You know, when you go to London or Paris,
We
they're
have a 19th century hanging in
yeah,
You can't see anything, but it's very
yeah, you
historically
can't see
accurate.
you can't see anything. Or you go to the Rosenborg in Copenhagen, and there's just stuff everywhere. There's no way you can see half of it. But I think it's so much more inspiring and amazing when somebody goes in there and sees that than you know, putting a modern piece next to it or getting rid of the frame, which the frame is many cases part of the artwork.
Well, Carla and I were talking about exactly this morning, and I think you get the sense that what young people, hello young people, what we really crave is authenticity. And I don't think young collectors, young museum visitors are craving a watered down kind of history.
I think that you know, things come and go. If you look at fashion, nothing ever really goes out of style, does it? And I do think that as the world becomes more technologically driven, you know, we've got AI, we've got everything going on, that as time goes on, people are going to crave the tactile, the historical. We want to go back to our roots more and more. And I think I'll be very curious to see if we see a shift in terms of museums, and certainly in terms of how we're engaging young people. So everyone thinks, well, to engage young people, you have to make everything contemporary. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's about our humanity. I think people want to come back to that. Or if they don't now, hopefully they will soon.
I think that's really true. And there was a time in the, you know, late 20th century where Tiffany was really cheap. And now it's starting to come back. Fabergé, ironically, there was a period where nobody wanted that. Unfortunately, I was probably not born yet at that point. But
Laurence, you're so involved in the online media world. I wonder, what are your thoughts on that? Especially the object itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of our lives are experienced through a screen. And I think that sadly, we're inundated with what some call like AI slop. And it's this idea that it's creativity totally bereft of any real emotion and meaning. And so I think there's this pendulum swinging back among young people to embrace the analog and to see something in the flesh that's been crafted by hand. And there's a heightened appreciation for that, where you're drawn away from the screen and you can actually see the time and craft. That in of itself is like a form of luxury. So yeah, I do think there's an opportunity there.
For sure. Okay, now the sad news. Tell me a sad story about a piece that you missed that hurts, other than the mirror on my stand that you didn't have the opportunity to purchase at the fair. Is there one that haunts you to this day?
There are so many.
Pick one.
There are so many.
Tell us a story.
So it was and this is, I suppose, the struggle with auctions, is you never know who's in the room, because everything's, again, online now, or the people on the phone or whatever. And I saw this really beautiful, it was a Henry Moore helmet. You know, the helmet head series. It was absolutely stunning. It was nice and big. And I just thought, I love that. And the estimate was already pretty high, because it's Henry Moore. And sort of slightly, you know, the low estimate was like the top of my budget. And I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to get this. And I thought about it overnight. It was a few days before the sale happened. And I thought, you know what? It's such an iconic piece. It's such an iconic artist. It was, you know, a big auction house. I'm not even going to register, because I'm not going to get it and it's going to hurt. And I left it. And a couple of days later, I went back to review the sale, and it sold at the low estimate. No one was in the room. And I was like, oh, why didn't I go for it? I think if there are any other dealers or people that buy at auction, you know that feeling when you look online, you're like,
try.
oh my God, always try.
Always
That's the
try.
moral. See, every sad story has a moral. Well done. You found it.
I'm an optimist. Justin, you...
Well, I would say what you just said, which is that there are so many and I obsess over them. I should probably be medicated so I don't obsess over the ones that got away. But
how much is it going to take for the mirror?
yeah. Oh, yeah, well, that's good. Although sometimes they get away and they come back up a few years later for whatever reason. So I've gotten at least one thing this year in which that happened. But I'll just start with one of the first ones when I started collecting that got away, and it was a tortoiseshell tea caddy from the 18th century that had these big silver lugs all over them, and it had William Beckford's initials engraved on the top. And I didn't really know who William Beckford was at that point. And he's was really the richest person in England in the 18th century, and had one of the biggest collections of decorative arts ever there. And I bid on it a little bit, and it got away, and I've regretted that ever since.
Can hear the pain.
Oh.
Still like this.
Yeah.
No regrets, Larry? Lawrence,
No
forgive me.
regrets. But it more just, I think in some ways, collecting, like if something is really meant to happen, it will. And so I don't know, I guess that's just the sentiment I try to carry, but continue.
I absolutely agree. Hence my broken icon.
It's meant to be.
On the positive side of things, if you had to give one piece of advice, either to a young collector or a collector who is just starting, what one little nugget have you learned from your time in the field?
I deal a lot with young collectors, and part of my kind of raison d'etre, as it were, is to encourage young people to buy things. I don't think, not only to buy things, but to become collectors. And I don't think that our generation are a generation of collectors. I mean, I think about my grandmother, for example, and like the older generations, they collected everything. They collected stamps. I'm sure everyone here has a family member that collected something. And I don't think that young people have that same sort of attitude towards collecting things. So my advice would be to just go for it. Just find something you like. Start small. It doesn't have to be something huge, it can be a small thing that you like, that you're interested in, and go for it. Don't hold back. I think that we do attach meaning to these objects, and they are the physical bits of our life that make up our life story, and you get to hang on to those, and you can show them to your friends, and you can hand them down to your children or your loved ones, or present them as gifts. They're little physical pieces of you that end up making up your history as a person. So my advice for young people is go for it. Try get into it. See what that mindset's like. I promise you, it's completely addictive. But it's a very good habit.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. And I think it is scary, particularly if you're looking at, if you're not starting small and you're going for a particular sum of money. Think about it. Make a wise decision, but don't take too long, because then the mirror will be gone.
We're going to sell that like a dozen times this hour. Justin?
I think it's just collect what you're interested in naturally, and then your taste evolves over time, and it's okay to get rid of some stuff and trade up, or keep it and get new things. And what I particularly love about antiques and decorative arts and old masters is that they have a history to them. And, when I look at them in my house or I see them in a museum, you think about who else was looking at them, or who was sitting in that chair, or who was using that silverware. So I think that adds a whole nother dimension to the objects that make them so much more exciting than just, and there's some beautiful contemporary furniture, for example, but so cool to get something that's more than just functional. That really has a history to it. So.
I think kind of what you're getting at is that a collection should have a premise or a guiding principle. And that's something I tell clients all the time. I try to tell myself too, that everything should have a reason in the collection. Everything should be connected, because there's way too much art out in the world.
I think
that
it
you could
has to
have.
be personal too.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to connect to you somehow emotionally, like there's, all of us will say with the pieces that we wouldn't ever part with, they're things that I look at, like I said with my little sculpture. It's something I look at often. And I think if you have a collection where there's something at home and you walk past it every day and you think, oh, I love that. That's what it's all about. It's looking at something that makes you happy every time you look at it, or reminds you. It doesn't have to be happy. It can be something that reminded you of someone you lost, or whatever it might be. Whatever emotion you connect to it, it has to have that impact for you.
It's the thing when people hire designers, and designers are great, especially if it's a big place and you need it done. But a lot of times it doesn't represent the person's personality. And the houses in collections that I really love going into are the ones where you walk in there and you really get who the person is by going in the place. And I think that's what made Anne Getty's collection so special. That's what's so amazing about Hearst Castle. It's like the personality is in every room. Or if you go to the Morgan Library, or the Frick, or the Wallace in London, or the John Soanes collection.
But you don't have to be Anne Getty or William
No, you don't.
Hearst. You can.
No, you could have a one-bedroom apartment and do that.
I was just going to say, I think especially for young collectors, instead of being so hyper-focused on a certain artist or a certain piece, I think the wisdom I would try to impart is to collect stories, because ultimately a piece can be beautiful and can be appreciated on a two-dimensional value, but if you have the opportunity to share the story behind the work, whether it's personal or about the artist or about the piece, you're bringing in that person into like a deeper sense of connection. And I think the sharing of stories is such a fundamental part of the human existence. And so I think art is an extension of that.
I think that's all true. I think also on a practical level, when I think of, because Mica and I are both in the trade and you two are not in the trade, I think when I think of, and the only difference is that we advise other people. And I think you have to choose something that fits your, of course, follow your heart. The first question is, that I always ask a client, do you love this? And if the answer is no, or maybe, or sorta, or I think I should because the price is right, or because somebody has one down the street, or I saw it in a magazine, the answer is no. Don't do it. Don't let anybody tell you to do it. You have to fall in love with it and live with it and want it every day like a friend. That way, if the price goes down or the price goes up or whatever, you're still happy with it. I think a work of art, as cheesy as this sounds, a work of art should be your friend. And that's what matters to me most of all. Now, we're at the winter show, and we're standing outside the winter show, or sitting outside the winter show, and I wondered, because you've all spent quite a bit of time at the fair these 10 days, 9 days, tomorrow 10, I wondered if you had to shoplift one work, tell me your one work that you would.
So I'll continue the theme of sharing sad gay stories, but this one has a happier, happier outcome. There was a work that, Patrick, you introduced me to by this artist, Brian Stonehouse, and he was a gay British spy in World War II, and he was put into 3 different concentration camps and essentially survived by drawing his captors, and that's how he was able to get out of Dachau. He later made it to New York and became an illustrator for American Vogue and was able to create these amazing works, one of which is, on display at the booth. And so I think, again, it's consistent with everything I've shared. A work like that, I think, really is representative of what the Winter Show is all about, which is both, sharing stories that we may be familiar with, but also ones that have not been fully told and are really ripe to be rediscovered.
At the European Decorative Arts booth, there's a little porcelain 18th century jug that belonged to William Beckford originally, going back to that one that got away. So I think that that's quite special. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece, definitely a museum piece. And then also in Peter Finer's, there's this beautiful 16th century, it's a rifle, and that's not the technical term, but it's from Nuremberg, and it's just beautiful. It has inlaid ivory, and the barrel has this kind of beautiful metalwork. It's on display there. I think that's quite special.
So for me, there is obviously I'm very big into sculpture, and there is a jeweler here. There's plenty of really beautiful jewelry here, so I do suggest going and combing through it all because it's stunning. But there's a particular dealer called Didier, and they deal specifically in jewelry that was made by famous sculptors. So of course I'm obsessed. And they have a little brooch by Claude, it's quite a big brooch, by Claude Lalin. And it is a unique, only one in the world, so tantalizing, cast of a model called Verushka's mouth. So it just goes like that, has a little bit of chin in it. And it's solid gold. And I love it, because I love Lalin, female sculptor, get in. But the story behind it's really amazing. So Lalin her daughter was pregnant, and she was taking body casts of her daughter, and Yves Saint Laurent saw what she was doing and thought it was really cool. So they came along and they sent this model Verushka to have her body cast, and that was kind of the birth of, the metal plate that you see all the time on the red carpet now. And so go look at Didier. They have, all of the archive photos, beautiful breastplates, stunning things that then walk the catwalk with Yves Saint Laurent. But what they didn't realize was that this model had had other parts of her bodies cast as well. And so Didier found just this cast of her mouth, which is absolutely beautiful. And I'm obsessed and I would like it.
I think the rifle is the most worrying one to steal. My
Just side note, I couldn't even go. I have a hunting license, not because I could ever go hunting, but I just want to go on an English hunt because of the pomp and circumstance.
My piece is an oil sketch by Frederick Lord Leighton on the stand of Polly Sartori. Actually, it's a small oil sketch made on the island of Capri, where Leighton went, and you see these marvelous little houses, little white plaster houses, punctuating this Mediterranean landscape. And it's particularly charming because people think of Victorian art as something often very formal and didactic. And these were little oil sketches which Leighton just made for himself during his travels. And they're free and delicious and spontaneous. So I recommend you have a look at that as well. Alex, you had a question?
Where are the chairs?
That was my question too. I'm so glad you asked.
It's a good
Was that
question.
Too personal. Where are they in the entranceway?
They are, so the boss at home is not as into the 18th century look as I am. And our place is already packed with stuff. So we have other stuff in there, but those are in art storage, sadly. When I went to Ditchley, the historian they had me back, and he asked if I would loan them back, and I was really excited to do that. I would have loaned them back. But they don't have they have almost no original furniture in there anymore, and they have events. So they were worried about liability. So my plan, I eventually am going to bring them out into a space that I'm going to put everything in.
You sat in the chairs. Are they comfortable? Are they?
They are actually. Yeah, they're very comfortable. They're very early 18th century tend to be bigger and bulkier, and so they're actually very comfortable. They would have been they're definitely comfortable. I think when they were in Anne and Gordon Geddes, they had put like some kind of slip that they made for them when they would have parties and put over them. But they're very functional actually.
And so if we could have a little bit more information about each of these items, how big is each piece? What is it made of? For instance, the chairs, what kind of wood are the legs made of? Or this drawing on the screen right now, how big is it and what is it on? Is it on paper or canvas? Do you plan to frame it? Yeah. Just some more information about each of the items would be very enjoyable.
Backwards?
Yeah, I'll start with this. I mean, for lack of, it's like around like this size. And it is framed and it's on paper.
Chairs, that is actually a question I should know. I know they're gilt wood. I don't know what kind of wood specifically, but they're gilded, all of the wood that's visible. But they're pretty large. They're wider than these, and they're taller than me sitting down. So they're really like in the 18th century, you would have had these in the grand hall of a place. Well, they were made for Ditchley. So you could see that painting was in the 50s. But they were specifically designed for this house when the home was built, and you can see all the couches that are kind of on the side of the room. They would have been in a hole like that.
Also, 18th century chairs are very comfortable. Because they were made for people with lots of clothing. So 19th century chairs get a little spindly, but 18th century chairs.
It's kind of like if you look at these are like the clothes were very elaborate for men as well. It was almost more elaborate than women's clothes. And so, you needed a lot of space.
My little sculpture is in bronze, and it is yay big. It's only little. And I actually move it around at home quite a lot. I think that's the fun thing when you have slightly smaller sculptures, is that you can actually any art, you can sort of curate everything when you feel like it. So normally he sits on my desk, but sometimes I'll kind of create a plinth out of all of the various catalogs that I have at home, and you'll place it on top of there. So he moves around wherever I want to see him, but he's always around somewhere.
My icon is painted in polychrome. The wonderful thing about Greek and Russian icons is that they're all one piece. There's one panel, the frame and the painting. There's no painting and then there's no frame. It's all carved from one piece of wood, which is really quite lovely and immediate
Do you know what wood it is? Would it have been painted on poplar or
It's
something like that?
poplar, no, because in Greece, I think probably oak a lot of the time, but I have to confirm.
It's fabulous.
Thank you.
Besides a question, I want to thank you for being kind of an ambassador of Puerto Rico, even though you were not born in Puerto Rico. All the love that you give to us and your passion for the art and the museum. And my question about this beautiful flaming young, beautiful orange lady is, what has been the place that you have taken this wonderful piece that has made more impact in your life?
Oh, my darling, thank you. I love that you asked that question. This painting has a life of its own. It's a painting which, so the museum, the Museo d'Arte de Ponce in Puerto Rico, very unfortunately, had not only a hurricane, which is well known in Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria, but afterwards an earthquake, which damaged the concrete concrete building made by Edward Durrell Stone. So since the museum got closed for the earthquake in 2018, we've been touring the collection around the world, and particularly Flaming June. And I was honored to bring Flaming June to the Metropolitan Museum in 2022. And Max Hollein, the director of the Met, said to me one day, he said, "You just wanted to have Flaming June a few blocks from your house, right?" And I said, yeah. So that is my joy, but also at the Royal Academy last summer, because there were banners all the way down Piccadilly with her on it. And I thought, how marvelous. I felt very personally proud, but I also felt very proud for Puerto Rico, because I thought, right in the center of London, there we are on our lovely island, showing ourselves at our very best. Shall we end it there? Thank you all so much for coming.